51 is Bill number 2011-2, updates the regulations governing certain commercial, entertainment, and solicitation activities within the pedestrian mall. Councilman Barlow, do you wish to have it read?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. After I read this, I'd like to put some comments on the record, too, Your Honor.
All right.
This is Bill number 2011-2, in order to update the regulations governing certain commercial, entertainment, and solicitation activities within the pedestrian mall and to provide further related matters. Your Honor, members of council, pardon me if I don't go down to the podium, but I would like to just give you some brief highlights of this new ordinance. As you're aware, for approximately the past...
Excuse me, Mr. Jervik, Mayor Pro Tem wanted to...
Yes. Before you do, Brad, I just wanted to thank Mr. Lichtenstein and the ACLU for working with us on this ordinance. It's something that we need to have for both of us to be successful, and I just hope this is a huge start for us in working something out when we have problems like this. So thank you, Mr. Lichtenstein, for being here today and for your input with Mr. Jervik on creating this, to me, much-needed draft.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I quite agree with that. This ordinance, we've been litigating this for almost 15 years now, and we've been putting before this council various iterations of this ordinance. This is the first one that will appear before you that we have concurrence between the ACLU and the City of Las Vegas as to the language. Mr. Lichtenstein, let me also extend my congratulations and thanks to you for your work on this. Also present in the audience today is Jeff Victor, the president of the Fremont Street Experience Limited Liability Company, and their counsel, Todd Weiss. With your indulgence, Your Honor, I'll be very brief. The highlights of the new ordinance are as follows. We finally have a definition of solicitation and coercive solicitation that complies with previous court orders, and we're in agreement with the ACLU. We have a new definition of street performer or busker. These are individuals that perform downtown that don't charge money. They may ask for a donation, but there's not a quid pro quo, and that definition becomes important for what I'm going to talk about in a moment. For the first time, we are addressing the issue of people erecting tables in the pedestrian mall. Tables are limited to 3 feet by 3 feet, one per organization, and there are certain restrictions as to where they can be located. And tables can only be present for what you're going to do at the table. You can't stack literature at the table beyond the size of the table. You can't have other accoutrements with you. With regard to solicitation, tabling, and street performance, there are prohibitions against all of those activities or placement of tables within 20 feet of an ATM, 10 feet of a retail kiosk, 10 feet of the perimeter of an outdoor dining, 20 feet of fire lane or crosswalk, or any place where pedestrians are obstructed or impeded. In the case of street performers only, in addition to those restrictions, there's a restriction against street performances within 200 feet of a stage performance during the performance, not at all during the light show, and not at all during special events in the mall. The most common that you're familiar with is the New Year's Eve celebration. Entertainers also cannot reserve spaces in the pedestrian mall. You might have seen videos on an earlier iteration of this ordinance where individuals will go into the pedestrian mall and place orange traffic cones out before giving a performance to reserve a spot. Now entertainers are restricted to a 2-foot circle around their feet. Whatever fits in that area they can use. They can't bring with them anything bigger than a backpack unless there are certain items that are integral to the performance. So if they are, for example, we'll talk about hula hoops now. If a hula hoop is part of that performance, they can bring that. If juggling is part of that performance, they can bring that, provided it doesn't provide a danger to the public. But they can't bring anything bigger than a backpack. You've seen videos of people bringing wagons full of accoutrements and various items that they wish to perform with. That will no longer be allowed. Amplified sound is only allowed if it's integral to part of the performance of a street performance, and only then the noise level is set at a particular decibel level at 70 decibels at 50 feet from a kiosk, which is the sound of human voice, not necessarily my human voice today. And tables, as again said, are tables and tables only, not piles and cartons of literature around them. There's also a prohibition against your coolers, structures, racks, booths, and containers in the mall. All other activity that we have talked about, including leafleting, is allowed in the mall. Normally, ordinances don't tell you what you can do, they tell you what you can't do. But to make it clear for enforcement officers, we've included in this ordinance a list of things to make it clear what you can do in the wall, and leafleting would be one of them. With that said, I know Mr. Lichtenstein is here, Mr. Beiser here, they may wish to put comments on the record, as well as Mr. Victor, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Ross first, please. Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, I appreciate all the efforts of both Fremont Street Experience and the ACLU. And I think this is heading in the right direction. I still have great concerns about, I think we're going to be revisiting this one day. I'm concerned, certainly, ability for people to do things as they see fit on public sidewalks and streets. However, to what hindrance do we allow that to occur when it comes to the businesses on Fremont Street and the Fremont Street Experience? That's a great big concern of mine as we continue down this road. But I think this is the start of the path in the right direction. Certainly, all sides working together. Concerned also, Mayor Pro Tem and council members and all involved about these street performers and anyone performing for money, regardless if it's tips or what have you. I think there needs to be some kind of licensing requirement and regulation in regards to that. This is an entertainment venue, and I'm quite concerned about the so-called busters, Mr. Jervik, and you know I've had this conversation with you. I'm going to support this as we move forward, but I don't think we're quite done yet. And so it's that fine balance of how do we balance those First Amendment rights as well as allow the businesses to continue to be successful and grow. And Mr. Lichtenstein, you and I have had that conversation just recently. And that's a big concern of mine, but I have to hand it to all of you involved, and Brad, you included, on getting to this point. So I thank you very much.
Mayor Goodman.
Yes, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you. I want to echo some of the things that you said, Councilman Ross, because I share a concern. I want to get a little bit more particular on one subject matter, and that's what Mr. Victor brought to my attention in a briefing, and that's the street performers. You know, let me start off by saying I think this bill is moving in the right direction. I think that reasonable minds got together and came to some compromises, and I'm going to support the bill. But what I've been told about some of the street performers are that these folks come down, many of them wearing masks. And we're not talking about one or two people. We're talking about, at sometimes, Mr. Victor, and correct me if I'm wrong, a couple of dozen people down there in the same evening. And what we've got is, they're called street performers because they come down to the street and perform in a costume. But many of these folks are wearing masks. And our tourists that are coming down and experiencing the nice atmosphere out there with the kiosks and the other entertainment might believe that these street performers are part of the city's entertainment presentation, that the city is sponsoring these folks. So an adult that's walking through the Fremont Street Experience with a toddler and a street performer comes up and, you know, wants to, quote, perform, the next thing we know, these young children are being touched and picked up in a, a nice way, quote unquote, by the street performers. But we have no idea who these folks are. They're wearing masks. We don't know who these folks are. And so I'm sharing the same concern as you, Councilman Ross, that I think the bill is going in the right direction, but it's not perfect, and it certainly doesn't cover all of the possibilities. So I think we need to go into this with open eyes, in the sense that we may need to revisit certain things as we go down the line.
Right, that's what I said. Any other comments?
Can I have just one question, Mayor?
Sure.
If I may, in regards to Councilman Wilson's comments, I think you're hitting it on the head, and I think I want to ask our legal team, is it illegal to restrict mask wearing? And I guess you can't do that in the public. I mean, if it's a private location, you probably could, but not in a public location, restrict anybody from wearing a mask. That's correct. Is that correct?
That's correct. If the mask is part of the performance, the mask is legal. There's nothing that can be done to force them to give up their identification or anything else. If they're committing a crime, that's different. But let me make a distinction. This bill distinguishes between street performers who charge, and when I say charge, I'm talking about a quid pro quo. A quid pro quo would be, if you want your picture taken with me dressed as Superman, you have to give me $20. That's a quid pro quo. Or I've taken a picture and you say, you now owe me $50. That is commercial entertainment. That requires permission of Fremont Street Experience and requires a business license. All other street performances, those that include people who ask for donations, whether it be a passive donation, a bucket with a $sign on it in front of them, or a request afterwards, it'd be nice if you could give me some money for having taken that picture. All of that is non-commercial and is protected by the First Amendment. And a recent case out of the Ninth Circuit about a year and a half ago address this kind of street performer and cities' abilities to regulate them, and it's almost non-existent in this circuit.
Okay. All right. Well, I met with the Mayor Pro Tem and Mr. Victor, I guess last week when we were briefed on this. Mr. Jervik gave us a briefing, and I don't like it. I'm going to support it because the Mayor Pro Tem feels very strongly that we have to have a ordinance in place to avoid further litigation, and we haven't gotten the best of it in the litigation so far. And that's the thing that bothers me, because I have great respect for the courts, and I have a great respect for Judge Ezra, who was the district court judge that set the parameters of what we're doing here. And with all due respect, I think that Judge Ezra is wrong. I think that the Fremont Street experience is not a public street. I think it's a private enterprise. I don't see any reason why he can find that Waikiki Beach in Hawaii, 7 miles stretch of it, is protected from this kind of activity, but our Fremont Street isn't. To me, I question whether or not, with some of the language in his decision, whether he visited Fremont Street or whether he's talking about the Las Vegas Strip when he made some of his comments. The thing that I'm most concerned about is the singular complaint above any other in the 11 and a half years that I've been the mayor that I receive in my office is from visitors in particular who are accosted, for lack of a better word, by people out on the Strip who are handing out sexually explicit material which they do not want to receive. And I asked whether or not that would be possible under this ordinance down on Fremont Street, and have these items discarded so that women and children would be subject to viewing them. And I'm told that we can't hold anybody responsible for that. We can't hold the pamphleteers responsible for it. We can't hold the people who are passing out the material responsible for it, and we can't even cite anybody for littering. And I hope that we don't have the situation down on Fremont Street that exists on the Strip, because I think we will lose a family venue, which is so important to the success of our downtown redevelopment projects. And I would hope that that matter, if addressed at some future time, if it does interfere with the peace and goodwill of that particular venue, can be litigated with perhaps another judge and another panel making the decision. And I say that respectfully because Judge Ezra is a friend and a colleague of mine, but on this one he's dead wrong.
Mayor?
Yep. Councilman Barlow.
You're not mad, are you?
I'm not mad. I'm angry. I am angry. I am, because I think that a situation is going to be created here, to be quite frank with you, that I really don't want to exist in my downtown.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Mayor, let me say this, that I do want to commend the ACLU as well as the City of Las Vegas and the Fremont Street experience and everyone else that was involved in this process. This is a very tough tightrope that everyone had to scale. Unfortunately for the tourists of the downtown community, the residents of our great city, have to put up with what I will call a nuisance of whether it be the entertainment where people are being accosted, or the handbills that are literally being forced in the residents' chest that they don't want to receive, as you mentioned. I mean, this is something that I would love to see go away, specifically as it impede those businesses that have done the right thing. They've come in and filled out their business license and were approved by the city council, and they're paying their taxes, and to have business run away or be ran away from what I call a nuisance of individuals that are disturbing the flow of business is outright wrong. I understand that the justice system is in place to protect those who are violated, but I also believe that in some cases it protects those who are doing wrong. and I don't think that's fair. So I will, unfortunately, be voting for this item in favor, but I will be voting reluctantly at the same time, with not 100% confidence in where we are today. But I do understand that we have made progress, and for that I don't want to impede that progress that we've been able to make. And this fight is not over, because this is something that I'm going to, as long as I'm sitting on this dais, this is something that I'm going to continue to push to make right, because I believe that there is something that we can do. What it is today, I don't know, but it's something I'm most definitely going to continue to push forward to correct on behalf of those businesses that are doing the right thing in the city of Las Vegas. Thank you.
Mr. Bice, did you want to be heard?
I did hear, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Todd Bice, legal counsel for the Fremont Street Experience Limited Liability Company. I just have a couple of comments I want to make about the ordinance. We are very appreciative of the city attorney's office working with us, and also with respect to the ACLU, we all sat down, we hammered out an ordinance that none of us are, I think, overly thrilled with, but we view this as a step in the right direction. Mr. Mayor, as you know, we had met before about this. One of the original concepts, and that it was originally proposed through the city attorney's office, was an ordinance that was going to create some different zone type concepts, which would have allowed people, which would have set up the rules real clearly, where people could be, where they couldn't be, what they could do, what they couldn't do. The ACLU had objected to that. We understand this ordinance isn't the best thing, and not everyone is thrilled with all of it, but we are going to work with it. We're going to try and implement it, and we will see what it does based upon real life experiences. And I fully anticipate, just as Councilman Ross and Councilman Wilson have suggested, as all of you have, we will likely have to be back to fine-tune this as the process goes along. We may have to revisit entirely other concepts, just depending upon how this ordinance ends out working out. So I agree with most of the comments that are made, that this probably isn't going to solve all the problems. In fact, we are fearful that it will not. But we are willing to work with the ACLU, give it a shot, see what happens as a consequence of this ordinance. So we would ask for your support of the ordinance at this time, with the understanding that we are likely, that we may very well, as Councilman Ross points out, it's a step in the process. Thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem.
We need somebody else to speak, I guess.
All right, we have to make a very quick, because I'm losing.
I can't go now. Let's do that. It's going to be at 12 o'clock.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, please.
Juanita Clark, on behalf of Charles Neighborhood Preservation. We have a few concerns. On page 1, line 22, by what standards is unsightly to be determined? We felt that was a comment that my judgment may not be the same as someone else's. And so, do you want me to repeat that? I do have copies here. At 51 on the bottom. And page 2, lines 27 and 28, page 3, line 1, and page 5, line 9. We are concerned about celestial being used in the title of the vault constructed above Fremont Street and the various light and sound effects accompanying such images. Also, there probably is sound effects, but in the bill it says effect. Page 3, line 6. Does this mean that display vehicles can be used to transport persons or property? It mentions in there that it's not their primary purpose, so can they be used to transport that anyway? Page 4, line 2. By what standards is conspicuous to be determined? And our last one, does Bill 2011-2 negate Bill 2010-31, or will both be used for governing the pedestrian mall?
Right. I don't know the answers to those questions. I think you'll have to discuss it with Mr. Jervik, but can we do that during the break, please? Because I've got to move this along. I'm losing council members along the way.
Thank you.
For doctor's appointments and the like.
The Good morning. Alan Lichtenstein from the ACLU. First of all, thank you for the kind comments. I'll be very brief because I don't want you to lose council members. What we tried to do, and I have to give great credit to both Mr. Jerbick and Mr. Bice, is a difficult thing. This didn't occur in a vacuum. This occurred based on a lot of litigation, 14 years worth to be exact, not just from one court, from several courts, and even decisions that didn't involve specifically Fremont Street. So what we attempted to do is within the confines of the courts, and a lot of the decisions made by courts I don't like either, but we do live in a nation of laws, and we live with the decisions we don't like. Try to create the kind of time, place, and manner restrictions within that general framework that the courts have set up that would maximize the freedom of individuals for First Amendment rights while minimizing the interference with both the businesses and the visitors to the business. Will there be certain things that may come up that we hadn't thought of? I'm sure there will be, because, as you know, even in the recommending committee, some things came up. What I hope we will do, and I hope will happen, is that if a specific problem does come up, I'd certainly like to know about it and see if we can go through the process that we went through in order to get this, in order to, again, fine-tune these things. I don't want to go back to court. I've got enough other issues to deal with because of that, and if we can try to fix some of those things. But we also have to understand that living in a nation of laws, we never quite get a situation where we're necessarily happy with the entire result. That is part of the compromise, and certainly free speech comes at a price. It is not just warm and fuzzy. It comes at having to deal with people and comments that you don't want. Again, trying to minimize the negative secondary effects is what we attempted to do here, and I think we did a good job. And again, I'd like to commend people from the city and Fremont Street Experience for working so hard with us on this, so that hopefully we've got a framework to no longer litigate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Protem.
Yes. Mr. Jerwick, thank you very much for your due diligence on this item. This is not the only item that we've been able to, that we asked you to work on in the last 10 or 15 years. There's been many issues that has been challenged. Mr. Victor, I want to thank you for what you do and the predecessors that have been there before you. This is something that we envisioned many, many years ago, and it has come to fruition. We have problems, and we've tried to account for those problems and take care of them. Apparently we failed many, many times. And I listened to my council member sitting up here. This is not the only item that we have had problems with. We've had other items, especially in my ward, and some items in Councilman Barlow's ward. This item here today directly affects Councilman Barlow's ability to, I guess, answer questions when he's asked about things that happened in his ward, because he serves half of Fremont Experience and I serve the other half. And I don't know about Councilman Barlow's office, but I get many, many calls and I guess letters from out-of-state people that have been on Fremont Experience and have complained about some of the things we're talking about here today. And I can certainly appreciate the courts. I've always felt like sometimes they render rulings without even knowing what they're talking about, because they haven't been there and they haven't seen what we're trying to do. And even before we started with this Fremont Experience, we had a man that has been very, very successful. And at one time, there was talk about creating rivers around Fremont Street and down Fremont Street. And that was Mr. Wynn, who owned the Golden Nugget at the time. And I've always said to myself, I wonder what would happen if we would have had the canals with boats and people drowning in them, I guess, where they could really have something to complain about. But today, we have issues, and we have tried to address those issues, and we have been turned aside by the courts. And so, again, Fremont Experience has people that have invested money and time, and they are trying to operate it. This is not something that we, the city, operate. The Fremont Experience people themselves operate this, and I respect that. And when Mr. Victor, I see him over there, and he starts talking to me about some of the issues that he has, I want to help him just like I want to help anybody that resides in Ward 3. That's all we're trying to do here today, is help those people that live in Ward 3 and Ward 5, I guess, Councilman. They have issues, and we're trying to help them. We're trying to find answers for them. And yes, we're not going to make everybody happy, but we have to start somewhere. And that's why when I prefaced my remarks with Mr. Lichtenstein being here today, I appreciate that. I really do. I hope that we can have a continuation of the issues as they come up, where we can find solutions, so that Mr. Victor will be able to tell the people that he works for that we're doing all we can to help. And I think today, I won't speak for Mr. Victor, but I'm sure he's saying to himself, like he said to the mayor and I, and what the mayor alluded to is, they're not really happy with it. But we have to start over again. And that's what we're doing here today, is we're starting all over again. And I really I want to thank those again that have been a part of this. I think we've held this in advance, Mr. Jervik, 4 or 5 times. It's been going on for over a year. And it's easy to sit up here and say, well, we should have done this, we should have done that. But we didn't, and we haven't, but we're going to do this. And so I'm going to support this.
Right? Your motion, please. Ricky. Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, Mayor. I, with great displeasure, move for approval of this item.
Is that First Amendment, Councilman?
I'm sorry?
First Amendment?
First Amendment.
All right, let's vote, please. Post. Motion.